Success and enterprise of Kenya lies on its youth, said our President Uhuru Kenyatta. Currently, 78.31% of Kenyans are below 34 years old and 22% being between the ages of 15 to 24 years old. The main risks facing young Kenyans are lack of educational opportunities, unemployment, HIV/AIDS, crime and violence, substance and drug abuse, and social exclusion, just to name a few, hinder the youth from being able to reach their full potential. This is Politically Correct, and I am Maya Hayakawa. Here with me is the first official youth delegate to the United Nations, Miss Wambui Kahara. She joins me today to discuss issues that are crucial to the development of the youth in Kenya. Let's take a quick look at her profile. Wambui Kahara is the first official youth delegate to the United Nations appointed by the Kenyan government. She studied international relations at United States International University, concentrating on diplomacy and foreign policy. She won the Peace Award in China Revolution Conference 2010 and represented Kenyan youth at several international conferences, including the UN General Assembly in New York 2012 and 13 and the Hague Conference on ICC cases in Africa. She was also the official youth delegate to Rio during the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, where she mobilized youth delegates from all over the world to support Kenya's resolution to upgrade UNEP in Nairobi. She is the coordinator of Peacemakers International, an NGO that focuses on peace and development for youth. Ms. Kahara implemented the Get Informed, Get Involved campaign, whose impact was peaceful elections and increased the number of youth in political leadership positions. Ms. Kahara's greatest passion is humanitarian work and the sustainable development of the youth. She believes that a nation that doesn't take care of its youth does not have a future, and truly, it does not deserve one.
The most interesting thing about Africa is that Africa was known for poverty, and when you think of Africa, the mind or the picture that comes was a little, child holding a bowl asking for, food. But I'm glad to say that even the malaria deaths in some of the worst affected countries have declined by 30%, and the HIV infections have actually reduced by 74%.
All right, Wambui, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. First of all, impressive profile. I have to say you've achieved so much.
Thank you.
At such a young age.
Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, having achieved so much at such a young age, could you share with us a little bit about your journey to becoming the youth representative to the UN?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me in the show, and you're doing a good job. So my journey as a youth representative to the UN it started in 2012, and it's been a tough journey. I started up in high school, and in high school I was an average student in school, and so I was into so many activities, extracurricular activities, like I was in the youth club, I was in the drama club, I was in the music club, and I was in the UN club. So because of being in all these clubs, I got to travel a lot, and I got to see what best practices we can actually borrow from other countries. So I remember one particular event that I went to in the Netherlands, and it was a UN event. And because I used to do lots of model United Nations events. So when I was in Netherlands, I actually realized that Kenya was being represented by a very old an old man. The delegation was actually very old, and it was actually like a youth event. So when I came back home, I decided that this had to change, because you cannot speak from experience. You're speaking on behalf of the young people, but you're not young, so you don't have that kind of like an experience. So when I came back home, I wrote a proposal, and I sent it to the government, and I sent it to the UN, and I decided that I was going to, lobby to the government and to the UN to set up a program where young people would participate in all the processes of the United Nations. And not just that, but also to ensure that they're engaged in policy formulation, they're engaged in decision making, they're engaged in implementation, and of course monitoring and evaluation. So I sent it, and of course the government was very reluctant to embrace this proposal. But the UN was very supportive. So that's how I started out. And eventually, after a lot of lobbying and a lot of back and forth, the government decided to now adopt the proposal, and they set up the program.
So this is actually the first ever youth representative
Yes.
of the government,
Yes.
and also as the UN as well for Kenya, correct?
Yes.
Wow, that is such an achievement.
Thank you.
Why do you think the government was reluctant to having a youth representative? Yeah.
I think it's more of like the culture, and there's also that perception about young people, and of course when it comes to real decision making and when it comes to representing your country, there's an aspect of experience, and also governments also feel that they lack potential experts in certain fields to actually go and represent, maybe like your country. So initially there was like a lot of, back and forth. First, who are you? Secondly, what makes you different from all the other Kenyan young people? Thirdly, you're a woman. There's also that, kind of like cultural sort of like a mentality, So there was that at first, and it was like, why would we get your proposal and not millions of others that come every day to us? So there was that back and forth. But eventually, what happened is that I told them, fine, don't even accept my proposal. Just give me an opportunity to go to Rio Plus 20, because this was in 2012. So give me an opportunity to go to Rio Plus 20 in the government's delegation. And then that's when they realized that the young people are very key in terms of lobbying, in terms of lobbying to their governments. And they actually have like a say in the United Nations. So that experience for me in Rio Plus 20 changed everything, because when I came back home, they realized that young people can actually play a role in all these international forums.
All right, a few key things that you've mentioned there. You've mentioned being a woman, which I definitely would like to address later on. But also, were you ever intimidated approaching the government officials, approaching the UN with these proposals? Here you are, a young girl. Did you ever feel intimidated?
Yes, definitely I did, because first of all, there's the fear of like, who are you? And even if I had started like an organization, like a youth organization, there's that fear for, they will say no, and this is the government. And of course, people always say, for you to be in government, for you to get into the government, you need like connections, you need to know people and all that. So there was all those, things going through my head. But then I decided to, the worst thing they can do is say no anyway. So let me just do it. So I just went and I said, this is my proposal. And, I just need time to actually just make a presentation. And that was the hardest part, to actually get them to listen to me. Not even about the proposal. The fact that you have a one-on-one with a government official to listen to what you have to say, that was one of the challenges, because you needed to go there like so many times to get an appointment. And then when you come, your appointment has been rescheduled, and there's a lot of waiting, and you have to be very patient. So this was like a challenge, and but eventually I kept doing it, and I kept at it, and I kept going there until one day they said, okay, so what do you want? Tell us now, because it was becoming a bit, they were getting now irritated until they said, okay, fine, we're going to listen to you. What do you want? And that's when they're like, okay, then what we're going to do is that we'll give you this opportunity, and so that you can prove yourself. Yeah.
And when they asked you, what do you want? What was your response? What was your reply to that?
My response was that over 70% of Kenya's population are young. And young people still feel like they're marginalized, even though they are the majority. And it's important to engage these young people in decision making, in policy formulation, in every single step. Because if you don't engage them, you get into a situation where they feel socially and economically excluded. And that's why you see that some young people are getting into crime, and they're getting into radicalization. They're being radicalized because they feel like they're left out. But if you engage these young people in development, then they become drivers of innovation. And the other thing to note is that young people are innovative. They're passionate. They have the energy. They have, what it takes. But what they need to do is that they just need to be given the platform. And that was what was lacking at that time. Yeah.
So at the beginning of the show, we were looking at your profile. So many achievements, so many things that you've been doing. And out of all the things that you've achieved so far, what would you say you are most proud of?
What I can say is that when I started out, I was more of a policy formulation, and I represented the Kenyan young people in international forums at the UN General Assembly, at Rio Plus 20, and so many other forums where I got to interact with presidents. I got to interact with very high-profile people and actually make decisions on behalf of my country. So that was very. It was a life-changing experience, and you got to have like a one-on-one and networking with such great minds, and they have like a positive impact on you as well. But at some point, I still felt empty. I still felt like, wow, we are passing resolutions, we're making these decisions, but I'm not feeling the impact like on the ground. I'm not feeling it because, of course, the UN processes are long, and eventually they will be implemented, but it takes a while. So what I decided to do was to expand my proposal, and I said we need to set up an institution that will ensure that the policies that are being made at the global level can actually be implemented at a national level. And so that even if we are making all these policies, either we are coming down to Kenya and we are saying we're going to domesticate it, and that they can be like a follow-up mechanism of how they're actually implemented. And with that, we have designed programs and projects with the young people, and with that you can see impact on the ground, so that the decisions that you're making internationally, you can actually see them working firsthand at a national level. Yeah.
Okay, so I was doing my research, and you've been quoted saying, "It's Africa's moment. It's time for the young people to take over and lead from the front. We must be reminded that a government does not take care of its youth, does not have a future, and does not deserve one." Those are very powerful statements, and it's quite evident that you're very passionate about the youth. Where did you find this passion for the youth, and where did it really come from? And why so passionate about it as well?
I think it's more when you're growing up, you kind of like encounter some experiences that push you towards, I think, your passion. And for me is that I identified a gap. And for me, I was frustrated because I thought to myself, like, look at these young people. They have so much energy and passion, and they have innovations, but do they have the opportunities, and do they have the platform? And even if they have the opportunities, do they have the information? And so that gap is what I identified, and that's what drove my passion, because sometimes you have to be pushed to the corner to actually identify what you want to do. And for me, youth was something that I love because of being young, because I love being young. I love the energy. I love, the hype. I love everything about being young. And I think that young people are an untapped potential. And you can either, like at the moment, young people, there's a youth bulge in the world. I think young people are about 1.8 billion. And these numbers are actually set to grow. And you can either look at young people as an opportunity, or you can look at them as a problem. So if you look at them as an opportunity, is that you will tap onto, their ideas and their innovation and their passion to make them drivers of development. And young people are that resource. And that is why I think if you focus on the young young people, you will never go wrong. Because even the decisions that we're making at the UN on post-2015 development agenda, all this will affect the young people because this is their generation and this is their world. So I feel that it's important to engage them in every step of the way so that they can feel that they are part of the whole process. Yeah.
All right. Well, you were talking about the frustration that you encountered because you felt that the youth kind of lost opportunities and not really having any opportunities to reach their full potentials and help them achieve their aspirations. Would you say that the opportunities available to the public are actually unequally distributed to the youth? And what opportunities are these that you talk of, and how have the youth sort of been neglected? Yeah.
So I can say that yes, there are opportunities, but I can also say that there's still room for improvement. And the government currently has really worked hard to ensure that they have gone out there to say that young people, you know, we have the Youth Fund, we have the Uwezo Fund, we have the 30% procurement for youth, women and people living with disabilities. So it's for you young people to now take the initiative to come and actually access these kind of opportunities. As Kenya, I can say that I'm proud to say in Kenya in that we are actually like a milestone because we have gone so far in terms of the youth agenda because there is no country in the world, by the way, that has set aside 30% procurement for its women, youth and people living with disabilities. So Kenya has actually taken steps to ensure that they're taking care of the young people. The other thing to note is that 50 members of parliament are actually elected members of parliament are actually under the age of 35, and this is one of the largest numbers of youth representation in the world. And so when it comes to elected leaders like governors, senators, we are about 500 elected leaders who are, so it means that young people are more and more taking part in political processes, and they're actually coming in and saying that, you know what, we also have potential and we can do this. So opportunities are there. Though there's much that can be done to improve what is already there, and
yeah, it's okay, go on.
yeah, to improve what is already there, and we can also form partnerships to ensure that these opportunities are actually accessed by majority of young people. Yes.
All right, thank you. Well, great discussion there. Unfortunately, we need to take a break. So when we come back, more with Wambui Kahara. Stay tuned here at Politically Correct.